Almost by definition, adventure travel puts you outside of your comfort zone. Frankly, I think the best experiences do. But often leaving your comfort zone brings fear and anxiety. Today we're going to look at the top 10 adventure travel fears that may be holding you back from adventure traveling and how to mitigate those fears, or at least live with them so they don't hold you back. This is the Active Travel Adventures Podcast, and I'm your host, Kit Parks. Ordinarily, we go on an adventure to some exciting destination every other Thursday, but many of you are telling me that you want to try adventure travel, but you're afraid. And those fears come in many shapes. So let's tackle those fears head on, one by one, so you too can feel the exhilaration, confidence building, and empowerment that comes from adventure travel. After all, adventure travel not only gets you to places you can't see unless you propel your body to get there, it also makes you feel so much better about yourself, as you can hear in the voices of everyone I've ever interviewed. No wonder we all get hooked. So let's get into it. Number 1. What if I can't do it? This is definitely a good question to ask yourself. The key is to match up your abilities to an adventure. Just go +1. For example, if you've never hiked before, choose an adventure that has a base camp rather than a linear hike that you must accomplish on a set schedule. If you've gone on a week-long hike, perhaps now it's time to try something with a little bit more elevation, like I did recently when I climbed Chiripo in Costa Rica. That was a really hard hike for me, but I was able to do it. So now I know I can maybe push myself a little bit more, a +1 on my next adventure. If you're new at this, perhaps first try something in the 3,000 to 5,000 foot elevation range and see how you do. Likewise, I know it wouldn't be good for me personally to hike to Everest Base Camp, as I already know that I've got some elevation issues. Also, you want to match how much physical endurance you want in a trip to the handy rankings that I've given to each adventure we cover. They're ranked on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being a couch potato, 2 being easy, 3 being steady, possibly all-day activity with only a few really hard parts. 4 has a lot more hard parts and you're probably working at it all day. And 5 is hard, but not climb Mount Everest hard. It's just hard. A fit person who did not train could do level 3 and below with no problem, but would surely have a lot more fun if he or she trained. 4 to 5 stars, that really requires training, or you're not going to be a happy camper. Not saying you can't do it, you just won't be happy about it. Your training is important. Realistically, look at your schedule to determine if you can do the proper training. I've decided just to keep doing my daily walks from now on with the 25 pounds in my pack. As we near backpacking season, I'm going to beef that up to about 35 pounds. I'll keep adding a couple of pounds of weight to the pack each week until it gets up to about the 35, 36 pounds. Even if you are just carrying 20 pounds on your back, you still need to get your feet and back used to it. Can you do it without training? If you're fit, usually, but expect high physical rated adventures to kick your butt. Truly, it's so much better to train. You'll have so much more fun. I've got a great training link that I'll put in the show notes and on the webpage at activetraveladventures.com. Number 2, what if I get hurt? This is always a possibility. Most people often get hurt when they've let their guard down or just tired. At the end of the day, pay attention to lifting your feet up so you don't trip on a root. Use trekking poles. My poles have saved me from countless falls. If you're in an area that you think you could fall, lean towards the direction you prefer to fall in. So if you do happen to fall, you can fall more safely, preferably on your butt. And like my sister Terry said in the last episode, I fell. And you know what? The sky didn't fall down and I was okay. I just got a little muddy. Keep a small emergency kit in your pack. A small tube of antibiotics, some Band-Aids, a bandage, and some vitamin I, ibuprofen. Also pack a compression sock in case you sprain your ankle. Check out the bonus episode we did on what to do if you sprain your ankle while you're in the wild. I also wrap duct tape around my poles. I've used it before to wrap my feet to reduce friction on blisters, repair tents, and so much more. Finally, especially if you're traveling out of the country, buy travel insurance and get it with the evacuation coverage. It can cost $50,000 to $100,000 to get you and fly you out to desired hospital. Policy prices are based on age, country, and activity, and you want to make sure that your policy covers whatever your adventure activity is going to be. A good policy will also reimburse you if you have an accident and can't participate in the adventure, and I also like it because it allows me to return home if there's a death or illness in the family. I have an elderly mom, so I always want to make sure that I can get back here quickly and easily. I went to Tanzania with my girlfriend, Mickey. On the morning we were to start the safari, literally, seriously, right on the way to breakfast, an hour before our trip started, Mickey trips and face plants. Her face was all torn up, and the doctor wouldn't let her go into the bush in case it got infected. So Mickey stayed in that lovely lodge for the 5 days of the safari. It took a while, but she eventually got reimbursed by her travel insurance company for missing that safari. Accidents are rare, but it's best to be prepared. Number 3, I'm afraid of criminals. In all cities of the world today, you need to take the normal precautions. I put links to the helpful State Department travel website for each country and the free travel planners that correspond to each episode. The travel planners are sent to you automatically if you get the newsletter, or you can download them directly from the webpage. Remember, on most adventures, you're rarely in a city. However, whenever I am in a city, here's what I do. I keep a little bit of cash in my pocket. I keep my passport, credit cards, and the big money in a hidden pouch under my clothes, and I may put up to $50 in my purse or a backpack. I never wear any flashy jewelry, and if I need to get into my good stash, I make sure I do so out of sight, say like in a restroom or something. I remember my girlfriend Mickey cracking up when she saw me pull out my credit card from my little hidey hole pocket I'd sewed into my camisole. The passport, credit cards, etc. rest in the pocket against my rib cage, and you can't even see that I'm hiding anything under my clothes. Luckily, crime in the countryside is pretty much a non-issue in all the many countries I've been to. Still, I avoid putting myself in a vulnerable position, such as walking alone at night when all the other people have turned in. I watch my drink at all times just to make sure something doesn't get slipped into it. So just be smart and you'll be fine. You can also join a group tour so you have the safety in numbers, plus have a local guide who knows the ropes. One last thought on crime. I hear all the time from non-U.S. citizens that they're afraid to come to the U.S. because of all the gun violence. Remember, folks, the U.S. is a huge country, the vast majority of which is completely safe from gun or any other kind of violence or serious crime. You just don't go into the troublesome areas. It's like saying, oh, it's too dangerous to come visit me in North Carolina because there were 20 shootings in Chicago last weekend. I live about 1,000 miles from Chicago. I can't recall any shootings in my area, and there's a ton of guns around here with all the hunting. Most of the Chicago shootings are in particular neighborhoods that you just avoid. So simply do the same when you're traveling. I love Chicago. It's one of my favorite U.S. cities. And just because they have gun violence in certain parts of the city doesn't mean I'm not going to go to Chicago anymore. The locals can advise you where it's safe. For example, I was going to a dinner meetup outside of Berlin. Traveling solo and not knowing the area, I asked a local if it was okay for me to be walking around by myself after dark, about 9 o'clock-ish. He said the streets were fine, but that I shouldn't cut across the park. Likewise, since I do like to wander, explore, and kind of get lost whenever I'm in a new city, I had another local take my map of Berlin and circle all the neighborhoods I should be avoiding. I had no problem whatsoever, and I never felt the hairs rise. That is a signal that I always listen to and recommend that you do as well. Your brain has somehow picked up some kind of a signal, so listen to it and don't worry if you have to make a scene if necessary, if you feel that you're in an unsafe situation. Number 4, I can't speak the local language. If you're listening to this podcast, you are blessed that you know the world's international language. You can almost always find somebody who speaks a little English. If not, pantomiming is fun. Or find a teenager. They learn English by watching movies, listening to music, and playing video games. So they can often help. You can also download Google Translate directly to your phone and use it offline. I'm going to put a link to it on how to do it in the show notes and on the website. If you're traveling to a country that does not speak English, take the time to learn at least please, thank you, where's the bathroom, yes, no, hello, and goodbye. It's going to endear you to the locals. YouTube is a fabulous free resource that you can use to pick up a few key phrases. I'm learning some Thai and Dzanga, I'm not sure I said that right, for my upcoming trip to Bhutan. Here's a trick I learned when I was getting my Teaching English as a Second Language certification. Draw the phrase. The more ridiculous you make it, the more memorable it is to you. For example, I'm learning the Thai phrase for, can you speak English? Here's how you say it. Sorry about the audio quality. Phonetically, to my ear, it's kun phut pasa Ingrid dai maika. So what I drew is a ludicrous picture of a raccoon with a big foot sticking out, a large double arrow to indicate passing. The best I could come up with is knitting needles and yarn for Ingrid, a sunrise for die, and arms folded across the chest for my, and all polite females end sentences with ka, so I'm able to remember that part. This is a really effective technique for somebody visual like me because I readily remember my picture. I'll put a photo of my drawing on the website. The drawing is nothing but a simple stick figure representation, but it truly is an effective technique that's helped me a lot. Alternately, you can stick to English-speaking countries or places where almost everybody speaks English. That's still going to give you tons of options. Or you can go on a guided tour. There, your guide's going to be able to speak the local language and English. Number 5, I don't have anybody to travel with. Please, please, please don't let that stop you. Solo travelers make up a huge and growing portion of the adventure travel community, particularly with women over 50. Whether you're single like myself or your partner doesn't like adventure travel, you're going to meet plenty of fellow travelers and are often going to make some lifelong friends. Linda of the Mont Blanc episode and her husband met Phil, who was traveling solo. Phil then joined them on their trip to Machu Picchu. I met Simon on the West Highland Way in Scotland last June, and we still keep in touch. And he and his girlfriend have offered to show me around whenever I do the Cotswold Way. If you're worried you're going to be lonely, go on a guided tour. I promise you're going to bond with your fellow travelers. Sometimes you're going to have to pay a single supplement, and if you don't want to pay it, some companies will match you up with a same-sex roommate. If you wait until you find a travel mate, you may never go. So just pick an adventure, pick a time, and then book it. You're not going to be sorry. Number 6, I don't like to rough it. No problem. Nowadays, there are tons of great adventures that end each day in a comfy bed. You can use the search bar on the added website to narrow your options to those that have the comfort level that you prefer. Many of the adventures I've covered use guest houses for accommodations. If you're not willing to camp or stay in a mixed dorm with a shared bath, simply eliminate those adventures from your list. You're never going to have enough time to do all the adventures that you want to do, so just pick accordingly. To help you choose, you can look at the itineraries on the website and in the travel planners. For example, you have to camp if you want to trek the Inca Trail, which is episode 14. But if you hike Mont Blanc or many of the other adventures I've covered, you sleep in a lovely guest house each night. Plus, on many adventures, you can arrange for somebody to transport your luggage, so all you have to do is carry a day pack. Super easy, super comfy. Number 7, I'm worried I'm going to get lost. Did you know that you can use Google Maps offline? Whenever I get to a new location, I pin my accommodation so I can always find my way back home. I also carry either the business card or put in my phone the address so that I can always hail a cabbie or Uber if I need to. In the wild, you're going to have to pay attention. I recommend a guide in areas you could conceivably get lost on an unmarked trail, like on my Nicaraguan adventure. But most trails are very well marked or blazed. A blaze is a symbol, like the white bar painted on trees alongside the Appalachian Trail, or a thistle on the post on the West Highland Way. You simply follow the blazes. There should be one at every turn or wherever there could be some kind of a confusion on a marked trail. If I come to an intersection and I'm not sure which way to go, I do 2 things. First, I choose a direction and then mark on the trail with rocks and sticks, indicating which direction I plan to go. And then I turn around and look to see what does this trail look like if I'm coming from a different direction. And I also look down at my little trail indicator that I just made in the dirt. So if I figure out later that I guessed the wrong way, and this generally happens in the first 100 yards or so, I turn around and then I can readily find my intersection again so I can head back in the proper way. You would be surprised at how often you can miss a fork if you're coming from a different direction, so this method helps me to self-correct and not miss any turnoffs. Also, there aren't many popular trails these days that you won't see other people. If you're really concerned about getting lost, purposefully choose a popular trail and then go in the popular direction. Not like Rosemary Burris in episode 5, who went in the opposite direction of most folks hiking the Coonsladen Trail, so she could have the trail all to herself for much of the day. There are also great map apps you can put on your phone, but as a backup, I always carry a compass and a paper map in case my phone dies. If the paper map is not waterproof, I make it so by watering down some Elmer's glue or any of the white glues, and then I'll paint over the whole map completely on one side. Once it's dry, I turn it over and repeat on the other side. When both sides are completely dry, sprinkle them with baby powder, and that'll help keep the map from sticking together when you fold it. This technique works on Xerox copies as well. It's also smart to keep a whistle on your pack and carry a headlamp. Number 8, I'm worried I'm going to get sick. It happens. You eat something that disagrees with you. When I travel, I pack a couple of oral rehydration packets to help me with rehydration, and gratefully, I've never had to use them. You just mix these packets with water so you're not carrying around a bunch of water weight. It's kind of like Pedialyte, but without the water. I'm careful about what I eat and drink, especially in second or third world countries. In those countries, I only eat cooked food, fruits I can peel, and I eat at popular places because popularity with locals is a good indicator of a clean, quality restaurant. I also only eat during normal meal time so I don't get old food, particularly important if you're eating at a buffet. Therefore, I'm not going to eat any salads unless I know that the veggies have been well washed in filtered water. I drink bottled water and even brush my teeth with it. I also avoid drinking any water when showering, and depending on the adventure and my access to filtered water, I may carry a water filtration system so I can drink water that I'm treating myself or a SteriPen. Right or wrong, I'll often trust a spring if I don't see any signs of livestock grazing in the area. I avoid drinking out of lakes and rivers and prefer drinking out of springs and small streams whenever possible. I'm going to put links to all these recommendations on activetraveladventures.com/16 or /fear. Back when I was learning to backpack, I had what I thought was a great idea. I'm going to train my body to get used to the stuff in untreated water. So I purposely drank untreated water from the river at Linville Gorge in western North Carolina. I foolishly thought that I was going to be able to build up an immunity like locals do in foreign countries. I got Giardia. I didn't realize Giardia is a parasite, so I had to take antibiotics to get rid of it. So now I'm also bringing antibiotics just in case. My doctor recommends that I bring Cipro, C-I-P-R-O. Yes, there's a chance you can get diarrhea, but you can mitigate this risk with some simple precautions and if you bring some of this powdered electrolyte and a prescription for Cipro. And you certainly don't want to forget a small bottle of hand sanitizer so when you're out in the wild and nature calls, you have proper sanitary facilities of your own making. You can also get immunization shots for many of the diseases, and I've taken about all of them. Don't let fear of getting sick keep you at home. Take recommended precautions and consider visiting a travel nurse to review what you should do ahead of time. My local county health department offers this service, and there's also travel clinics in cities that you can find just by Googling it. Be sure to keep good records of all your immunizations. Number 9, I'm afraid of terrorists. Yeah, I know, it's a new world we live in today. I got a couple of pieces of advice to offer regarding terrorism. A, check with the State Department. I put a corresponding State Department link on each of the episode's travel planners. The State Department travel website is super helpful in letting you know not only the common scams of an area, but also what danger there is of any terrorist threat. Most terrorist attacks are where there are lots of people, so you're unlikely to have an issue when you're out in nature. That being said, when you're in cities, avoid staying in American hotels or hanging out where a lot of Americans do, and never go to demonstrations, which could turn unruly. B, Americans should sign up for the Smart Traveler Enrollment Program. This is referred to as STEP, S-T-E-P. In the unlikely event of a problem, it's nice to know that our embassy can find and help us. Every time I travel overseas, I register my trip with the government. This way, if there's an attack of any kind, the U.S. government knows to look for me. If you're not a U.S. citizen, check to see if your country offers a similar program. These kinds of programs are helpful too for our final fear. 10. What if there's a natural disaster? Yep, disasters can happen. If your trip is logged on the STEP program, again, the government knows to come look for you. Linda in episode 7 mentioned a Mont Blanc adventure group mate who had been in Nepal for the earthquake. Note that this didn't stop that woman from going on this adventure holiday with Linda. My Nicaraguan guide was guiding a trip up Telica, the volcano I climbed last year in 2015 when this already active volcano decided it was going to spew out just a little bit more that day. When they started hearing new noises, they just ran, and they and everybody else in the area was safe. You can't predict all natural disasters, but the scientific monitors in place now around the world are pretty good at advising about potential earthquakes, eruptions, or tidal waves. The way I look at it is that I'm much more likely to be killed in a car accident at home than by any natural disaster in nature. Hopefully, if Mother Nature plans some kind of trouble, there's going to be monitors in place to advise me ahead of time so I can change my plans. This is what happened on my recent adventure to Costa Rica. Due to volcanic activity, we couldn't climb to the top of the Turrialba volcano. Scientific monitors indicated that it would not be wise, so the authority closed the area. On the webpage for this Costa Rica episode, I have a really cool video of this apocalyptic scene that's at the highest point we were allowed to climb. There's absolutely no vegetation. It erupted a few years ago, so there's just the blackened tree trunks and the gases are still spewing up out of the ground. It's really eerily cool. So these are the top 10 fears I'm hearing from you about why you're putting off adventure travel, or basic travel fears in general. I hope that if you have any of these concerns, that today you've learned ways to mitigate these fears so you can go forward with confidence to book and accomplish the adventure trip of your dreams. When you return, you're not going to believe how much tackling your fears are going to boost your confidence and plus give you the courage to add a +1 degree of nervous twitch factor to your next epic adventure. If I've missed any of your fears, be sure to write me at kit@activetraveladventures.com. Or please, just write me anyway and tell me what you think of the program or to offer suggestions. I really do love hearing from you. And if you wouldn't mind me calling you to ask you a few questions about this podcast and what you think of it, please include your phone number in your email. Oh, and I've got some exciting news for you. Several of the folks I've interviewed said trekking Nepal is right up there as their favorite adventure. Until my recent interview with Janet, I thought that this adventure was only for the hardcore, high-altitude super hikers. I didn't think it was something that I could do, particularly since I'm a bit altitude challenged. And remember, even though Nepal is in the land of Mount Everest, I don't cover any crazy, dangerous adventures on the Active Travel Adventures podcast. After researching Nepal, I wouldn't even include Everest Base Camp on this show because it's too hard and it's too high. So I was thrilled to learn that there is an adventure in Nepal that I can do. And if I can do it, so can you. So in 2 weeks, I'm going to be back with Janet Hampeter. She's going to tell us about her adventure trekking Nepal at a lower altitude, which still makes it doable so that you still get to see all the beauty and you get to feel the whole Nepal trekking vibe, but without killing yourself on a death march in high altitude. I can't wait for you to hear it. So be sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. Until next time, adventure on.